look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to the live broadcast of Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr and SoundCloud and iTunes and, of course, iHeartRadio. Oh, and I keep forgetting we're not live. We are pre-recorded. That is why we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In order for us to go live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we had to stop being live. It's just how things work. Anyway, we bring to you each Wednesday a focus on the hardworking activists at Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP.cc. Also, I want to say thank you to KDK Distributors for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. And on the program, my joint host and I are having a great joint conversation with one of our joint friends here on the Big Joint Broadcast. And remember, anytime you hear the word joint on the Big Joint Broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world pack their bongs, their vaporizers, their joints, and jointly take time for hemp. I pass this to my joint host, Peter Chris. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Casper. So we're taping this so we can play it live, right?
That's it.
I like that. I like that use of the language. Yeah, our guest today we've had him on before, and it's always interesting. He's retired Chief Deputy U.S. Federal Marshal, Matthew Fogg, and he's a proud member of LEAP. And Matthew, welcome back aboard.
Hey, it's good to be back on your show, Chris and Casper. Man, you guys are doing a great job, and you're getting the message out, and that's what we want. And always glad to be a part of the show.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get this off the plate real quick. You've been looking into political office a little bit, and you ran in a primary down there. You want to give us a little back what happened with it?
That's right. Yes, Chris, I just ran in the 25th district, Maryland's 25th district. The Democratic campaign primary for the state delegate position, and it was the Brown, as you know, Governor Lieutenant Anthony Brown won the primary for governor. He was a lieutenant governor, and his lieutenant governor is Ken Coleman, and the congressmen that got back in were primaries were Steny Hoyer, County Executive Rashawn Baker, and State Senator Ulysses Curry, along with a lot of other folks, including the delegates. And I ran for a delegate slot. I got about 2,000 votes. Did well. First time ever running in a public office for Maryland. And I think did well. We're looking at doing something in the general. Not sure if I want to announce it just yet, but we've got something we may do in the general election. So I got to know a lot of people, made a lot of connections, and I got a team of good folks behind me. And as you know, I'm also pushing to get the marijuana laws changed, as well as in the state, as well as this whole prohibition against drugs, making some changes to that when we look at the disparities and what the fallout from the war on drugs. Which I don't have to tell your audience; they already know it.
Absolutely. Now, was there a lot of discussion during the primary about the drug issue, or did they try to hide?
No. I brought up the issues about the disparities and the arrest rates and the fact that it's been probably one of the most devastating things to affect the black community since slavery. The fact that the way the war is carried out. So I definitely push that. I was also, my platform focused a lot on the criminal justice network, period. And also, how me as a U.S. Marshal played a role in that network, and how some of the changes that need to be made and what we can do to make changes. And the 25th district is probably predominantly minority, so it was good. It was a good, it was a good platform for me to run on.
It's interesting. Any society, when you get in a bad position in society, you wonder, how the heck did we get here? How could we have been this stupid and done this? And I was watching, there's a new HBO special. It was just on a documentary. It was just on this Monday for the first time. And it's about the Nixon tapes.
Right.
And one of the quotes in there that I send around to our speakers and stuff is, this is a quote from Richard Nixon: homosexuality, dope, immorality in general, these are the enemies of strong societies. And I'm thinking that is the attitude that caused him to kick off the war on drugs not too long after he made that statement. And also, it's interesting that homosexuality was in that listing also. And I look at him, not just that he upgraded the drug enforcement stuff, but that he called it a war on drugs and made law enforcement in this country look at our citizens as enemies, not as people that they were employed by. And it's interesting because before I became a lieutenant and captain, I was a patrol officer, and I was a senior patrol officer, and I used to do training. And on the last day of my training session, when I would have a new person, I would have them for 6 weeks. I would remind them, and they had heard this during the 6 weeks from me, but it was the last thing I would say to them before I turned them loose. And that is, always remember that every time you arrest somebody, you're arresting your boss, because we work for the people in law enforcement. And we have lost that attitude.
That's right.
And the people have become the enemy. And I just want to throw one quick thing into it, just to show you how incremental change seems like a good thing when it happens, but sometimes isn't that great. I was up in Vermont a year ago, and when I would walk into the Rotary meetings or the Kiwanis clubs to do the presentation, people would come up to me very quickly and say, "Oh, did you hear? We just decriminalized marijuana here in Vermont." And I would say to them, "Yeah, I heard. We did that in 1975 in New York. Give me a call in 30 years and let me know how it's working for you." Because before I answer this, I just want to comment that we have had decriminalized marijuana in New York State since 1975, and I just want to throw in as a suggestion a little phrase, and that is stop and frisk.
Right. Well, I tell you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the aspect of the us versus them, policing was always supposed to be about community policing. I mean, that's really what it's supposed to be about. Not that the cop is there to just go and lock up somebody, but it's supposed to help the community to run better. And of course, there are some people that are prone to crime, but then there are some people that definitely just need, a little urging to go the right way, or don't really understand it. But when we're talking about the war on drugs, we've already equated it to alcohol prohibition. We've already equated it to a sickness, or some form of, medical help if you got an addiction. The same way I just left Las Vegas for our Blacks in Government conference, and you see the number of people sitting out there at those slot tables and those gambling their money away, and you say that's the same type of addiction. What if you had a prohibition against gambling or alcohol? I mean, these are things that you just say, why was the prohibition against drugs seen as such a menace, and the police forces were turned loose on it to say, go after these people because they are enemies of the state. They are enemy combatants. And that's how we treated them. Even when you look at how we did our SWAT team operations and combat, we go into the communities with flash, and you would think we were going into, some foreign country that we were at war in Afghanistan or somewhere. Right. And it's crazy, but that's exactly what the war on drugs has done, and it has devastated the community, especially the black community. And that's why it's, so sensitive to my heart when I look at what it has done.
Well, it's interesting. I always tell the people, or whenever I'm talking to people about militarization of police, I say, first off, when I first came on the job back in 1969, I worked with a senior officer who was a World War II vet, and he was still involved very much with the VFW and all that stuff. He was very much, he respected his military career a whole lot. But he always used to say that if in your society you are going to have a military and a law enforcement group, you should train the military on one coast and you should train the law enforcement on the other coast. That's how far apart they are. And one of the examples I like to use on that is this. If you're in the military and you're taking fire from a building over there, what you do in the military is you blow up the building because it's war. If you're in the police force and you're taking fire from a building over there, your job is to get the person that's shooting at you and protect all the other people in the building. That's a very different function. But we're moving into the blow up the building attitude, very much so, like you just articulated.
Well, that's one thing, too, I've never been able to figure out is most police departments are able to see in advance what they're going to be encountering, if they're going to be arresting any particular person or persons. And normally, I mean, I can see occasionally if you're going after a gang of people, a gang of dealers who are really heavily armed in the middle of LA's, bad neighborhoods or whatever. But normally you're going for one, maybe two people at a residence. And I never understood the need to bring out 50 to 100 officers dressed in body armor and ready to go to war, and a tank to roll up to the front of the house, and helicopters flying overhead. And the people that come out are like two marijuana smokers, and maybe even in the process, animals get shot and killed, kids get, injured in the process just because a little overexcited, I think. I don't understand why it is. A little forethought's not even applied to the way they use their ammunition.
It's interesting, Casper, because I often mention this incident. I'm sure you both remember the Waco incident.
Absolutely.
Right.
And when before those
in Ruby Ridge.
Yep. Well, I'm mentioning Waco because something happened there, and I was watching it live, and I'll never forget this. For 2 weeks before the ATF went in there on that raid, they trained with the military. And then they came in and they went in on the raid. And as they were dragging their dead and wounded officers off the property, one of them, as they were going by the camera, said, "We couldn't shoot unless we had a definite target." And as soon as I heard those words, I thought to myself, there's the difference between military and police. And what happened there is because of that blending of training, and I know I'm very much concerned about the civilians that are harmed, but there were officers that got injured and killed because they didn't do it the police way. They did it a mixture of the police and the military way. And you can't blend these two things together, because when they went in on the raid like the military, when they got there, the idea that they were police officers kicked into their head and stopped them from spraying the building with bullets because they knew that
Casper and Chris, really, if you really look at military training, I've had some of it, even though I wasn't in the military, but we trained a lot for military operations. And to be honest with you, believe it or not, the military says the same thing. They say when they go into a building, they're not trying to kill civilians. They're just trying to kill the enemy combatants. Now, of course, we know, as you say, they blew up the whole building, somebody shooting you, but really the military, I mean, their precision, that's one of the things you've been hearing about going on overseas in Israel right now. What people saying, well, why is the military killing the innocent civilians? And they say, well, we fire a bomb into a location. If innocent civilians are there, I mean, we're sorry. We're just trying to get the bad guys. The same thing happens if we look at civilian life and police life. We go in these places a lot of times, and then, innocent folks get killed, and the police say, well, they just have to be collateral damage. We didn't mean to kill them, but they were in the way, or the bullet sprayed, or whatever. But we, as law enforcement people, I mean, I understand the dynamics of a SWAT entry and what we do, and I can understand how, if you look at, again, I look at the racial aspect of it. Okay, I know there's certain areas, there's no way in the world we would have done those same dynamic entry operations in some affluent white areas. No way that would have happened. So we knew how to do it. It's
right.
just that when you start talking about the urban areas or people who don't have the wherewithal, the money to fight back, to get the attorneys, to have the influence, its life is marginalized, minimized, and devalued. And so we see it over and over again, where most of the time we see black life really doesn't mean that much. And so they can take a war on drugs and something that's like marijuana, or, they could have done the same thing with alcohol. They just make something illegal and then focus all of the attention on the urban areas to get your arrest numbers up. And people just say, oh, okay, well, they're warring on drugs. They're doing their job. I always like to use your example, Chris, when you say how at the end of a dragnet operation, you got all of the drugs and guns, everything laying on the table. Yep. We tell the public, look at what we've done here. And people are impressed with that, but they don't really see the real reality of what we really have done and who we've taken off the street and how we've affected so many lives that's going to come back and make it even worse than all this dragnet operation that we just completed. So that's the problem that I got with this whole war on drugs. Is when I look at the devastation that we say since slavery, what it has done to minority and black communities, it's just horrible, man. And here it is today. We're still talking about it.
It's interesting, and if we have any, I'm going to say this little bit that I do because I think it's important, because we might have some listeners that are sitting out there saying, oh, racial, it isn't about race, it's about every drug law we have ever passed in this country, if you read the history of it, was racially motivated. The
right.
first anti-opiate laws we had in America was on the West Coast. And it was
right.
against those Asians that were bringing opium over here with them when they came to resettle in the United States. And here's the line that appeared in the articles in the newspaper. They were luring the white women into the opium den, so we had to make opium illegal. The first anti-marijuana laws we saw were in the Southwest. It was a little different. There it was, the workers are coming across from Mexico smoking this weed, and they don't work as hard in the field. The first anti-cocaine laws we saw in this country were generated out of the Southeast, and they were generated by articles about black jazz musicians who are stealing the white women away with this powder. And here's the one that everybody misses, alcohol prohibition. And I have people say to me, alcohol prohibition racial, come on, Pete, you're stretching here. And I go, no. If you look at the history of America, we had a period in the late 1800s that was called the Protestant Reformation. And it was a big insurgence of Protestantism in America. And there were two groups of people those Protestants did not like. One of them was called Catholics, and the other one was called Jews. And pouring into Ellis Island at the beginning of the 20th century were Italian and Irish Catholics and Jews from Western Europe. And the Protestants knew that their drug of choice of those people was alcohol, and that was one of the big motivations on why we started alcohol prohibition. And I just want to clear something up for everybody. The reason that most of the gangsters of alcohol prohibition were Italians, Irish, and Jews was not because there's something in their genetics that makes them that way. It was because they were pushed out of regular society. My mother, who was born in 1904, I remember her telling me, she was a nice Baptist lady, I remember her telling me that there used to be articles in the Buffalo newspaper for help wanted, and the last line of the ad would say, Catholics need not apply.
Right.
So that was the racial aspect of that. So these drug laws, no matter what they are, alcohol prohibition, marijuana, all of these things have not been anything about the drugs. They've been about a way to get a certain group of people yanked out of society. And today it is obviously blacks, and it has nothing to do with genetics. It has something to do with not being able to get jobs in legitimate workplaces, not being able to work in this society. You know, yes, I know we finally have a high melanin content president, and I'm so happy that that finally happened in this country, but that doesn't mean the racial problem in America is over.
Right. And just to add to a little bit, if you really think about it, when you talk about, again, and we say race as opposed to say ethnicity or religious affiliations, because I know, we know black Catholics, we know black Jews, we know black Italians, we know black people, all various races and ethnicities that would be considered black. But when you look at the long history of what the black folks have had to deal with from slavery right into this mess, right. Going from what we call post Reformation right into where we are today, it's like they never had the opportunity to rebuild. It's always something there to keep them the underclass. There's never been the mule and the 40 acres or anything, no way to run. And once somebody can just, like we used to say in law enforcement, I think that the number two, you had number one and the number two male. And I think the number one was white, number two was a black male. And I think all you had to do is say you got, you're on that radio, you got three number twos. Everybody's rolling to that direction. So it's like, you got this whole racial thing that has never, America is still as, it's racist as apple pie, and you still have it, and then you take and throw a drug war in on it. It just gives somebody a reason to say, okay, now go get them. And then you say crack versus powder cocaine, which you can't get any more evident or distinct to say, we want you to understand this is all about race.
Yes.
And we're going to make a law, and we're going to put it on the books in front of everybody to let you know crack versus powder cocaine is about race. When you start seeing stuff like that, you say, okay, because some folks have asked me the question, they say, well, Matthew, you believe in legalizing drugs? I said, listen, anything is better than what we have now. I said, clearly legalize. And I said, let me tell you something. They going to put your son or your daughter in jail for 5, 10, 15, 20 years of their life. You would be wishing it was legalized. I said, so the bottom line is if we know that that's what we can look at the statistics and we see that the abhorrent numbers and who's actually filling up these prison systems and building these prison institutions by their bodies, and we say, of course, legalization would be better than that. Of course, it would be treatment over incarceration. It's a better way to go.
It's interesting. You mentioned one of my favorite words that I always have to comment on, and that's jail and prison. And I want to point out to every listener out there that we have the largest prison population on the planet Earth. And not only do we have that, but we have one of the most efficient prison systems on the planet. Now, I'm only judging efficiency by the fact that when we put them in there, they don't leave until we let them out. You hardly ever hear of mass escapes from our prisons like you do from other countries. So, and in that huge, efficient prison system, we do not have one drug-free prison in America. And I like to point that out because we hang these signs in front of our schools to talk about drug-free schools. And I like to point out to people that the difference between the people in that school and the people in prison is the people in that school have all their liberties and the people in the prison have none, and we cannot keep drugs out of prison.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, it's kind of funny because I was debating this on CNN a couple of weeks ago, I guess. I was debating a New York prosecutor former prosecutor, and Don Lemon, and he was making it look like, he had sort of had this sort of attitude that the reason why, sort of like the urban areas have a propensity to use drugs. And I'm up here trying to tell them, man, they're everywhere. The ACLU report made it very clear that drugs are used in affluent areas just as much as they are in the urban areas. There's no distinction really between the use of drugs when it comes down to race and ethnicity. People use them, but it's just that, where did we go get them? And I'm like, shoot, we could have went after these guys. We knew where they were. They kind of make it, sometimes people say, well, let's open the air market. That's a bunch of baloney, because when I was running drug and gun addiction and working with DEA, we knew where the drugs was coming from and who our informants was getting it from and selling it to and so forth in the affluent areas. If we can find Osama bin Laden and all these, and Noriega, these folks, we can certainly go in these areas and pull these people out if we wanted to and jam them up and charge them the same way we did in the urban areas. We were just told not to go into those areas, and we were just directed away from those areas. And clearly we went inside his house and threw a flashbang up in there that would cause post-traumatic stress syndrome to any child in a room with one of them things going off, and then you running through there with all this black geon and gas mask looking like something from a Star Wars movie. If that won't post-traumatic stress you on steroids, I don't know what will. So, I mean, it's this type of behavior. It's like, again, his attitude, and people really had a lot of comments on that one. People were saying, this is a prosecutor's attitude, sort of like making it seem like somehow that blacks were more disposed to using this stuff. And that's why I'm like, man, this is crazy. I can't believe you're even commenting in that direction.
Well, one thing I need to jump in here. One thing I got to comment about is how important it is to pay our bills. And we do have a couple of sponsors for this particular show, and I want to thank them for making it happen. And we're going to go take a break now, and then listen to a short song about how wonderful marijuana is, and then come back and take a whole lot more. Time for Hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light that makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com. Or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
Get your smoke on, everybody gather round. My connection came to town. He's got chronic, don't you know? He came straight from Mexico. Buy an eighth or buy an ounce, but here comes the 5-0, so you better bounce. Get your smoke on, get your smoke on. Light up a joint and make it fatty. Get your smoke on. Don't tell my mom, I won't tell your daddy. Get your smoke on. Call your dealer, call him fast. Get your smoke on. This half ounce ain't gonna last. Get your smoke on. So smoke a blunt or smoke a J. Just pack up a bottle and I'll be okay. Get your smoke on. Get your smoke on. Legal stuff from Uncle Sam. Get your smoke on. Contraband from Amsterdam. Get your smoke on. Northern Lights and chocolate time. Get your smoke on. So many ways to get you high. Get your smoke on. Oh, I've been feeling all day long. So pack up some product and a 4-foot long. Buy an eighth or buy an ounce, but here comes the 5-0, so you better bounce. Smoke a blunt or smoke a J. Just pack me a bong, low down, I'll be okay. Get your smoke on. 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 Get your smoke on.
Yeah, baby, get your smoke on. I usually use part of that song as what we call a bumper coming back from commercial break, and don't usually play the song in its entirety. But I love the harmony in that particular music, and I think the words are clever, and it's just a nice piece of music to smoke to. Get your smoke on, and we certainly do here at Time for Hemp. Please do not forget, we are no longer just a lowly little show, but we are now a broadcasting network. That's right. About 30 hosts or more all around the world, from Chile and Paris and Japan and Canada and England and, of course, good old America have come together on this network to let the whole world know how horrible these prohibition laws are on the planet and how important it is to bring them to an end. You need to be part of the solution, and that's pretty easy to do. Quit worrying about whether or not Fraser and Niles are going to get a date. Get up off that couch and go out that door and put one foot in front of the other. Take medicine down to people who are sick and can't afford to buy it. send letters to people who are behind bars and let them know they are not forgotten. Just because they were back behind the bars for being involved with the plant does not mean that people out here on the outside have long forgot them. And, of course, write your congressmen and your senators and the president and let them know these policies must end. We are having a joint conversation with my joint friends at Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP.cc. Peter, Chris, and Matthew Fogg. And Matthew, I'm so excited to get things going on there in Washington. I'm starting to think that maybe, just maybe, me and a lot of my other marijuana activist friends will be down in front of the Washington Monument holding hands with the DEA singing Kumbaya.
You left out and probably with a joint, huh?
Yes.
But yeah, man, it's going to change. I mean, I can see the trend. It's going to change. The thing about it, though, is, it reminds me, it's like slavery. It's like after something devastates something for so long, and then somebody says, you know what, we've got to make the change. We've got to make the change. You say, why did we have to go so long before this thing starts to change? And why did so many people have to suffer and this country have to put so many people in grave peril and destroy so many families and so many lives filled with something so ignorant and yet so racist? And it begins to say, the scary part of it all comes up is, what will they come up with next? That's the scary part. It's like, I always remember, what's the guy's name, Chris, that every time I see his video, he was the Seattle police chief, and he said, Norm Stamper. Yeah, man. No, not Norm. It was another guy. Maybe it wasn't Norm. No, it wasn't Norm. He says, he's on the video, and he says, when we got rid of we went in there and we cleaned up the streets and we got rid of the marijuana and all of that, the dope. He says, and then the Miami boys moved in. Then they started shooting up and killing each other. He said, we wish we had our old drug dealers back. Remember that guy?
That's Jerry Cameron. He's
Jerry.
He was a chief police down in Florida, and he said that he had a drug problem, it was okay. Then the DEA came in and got everything cleaned up, and then all of a sudden they had drive-by shootings, and then the stuff they never had before.
Right.
And
right.
Well,
he said,
I was just saying.
They wanted the old guy. It just the comment was, we wish we had our old, the old drug dealers, the people we had there back, because they weren't as bad as these guys who came in with the automatic weapons and all that. The scary part, the point I'm making is, as we begin to understand how racist the drug war is, what will America, because it seems to be a trend of America to still continue with this sort of apple pie racism, what will it come up with next, to supersede the war on drugs? Yeah, that's the scary part.
Well, I can certainly tell you that the racist aspect of the war on drugs had no impact on me. I'm a white guy, and I can tell you that when first time I went to buy marijuana, I was 18 years old. I went into an all-black neighborhood where crime rate was considered pretty high. And it was about 11:30 at night on a weeknight. And coming back out, my car wouldn't start. A black police officer pulled up and wanted to know what the problem was and what I was doing. And I just said I was visiting a friend and leaving. And he told me that my problem was when he got out was I had the car in neutral. Told me to put it in park and to drive safely home, and he followed me out of the neighborhood till I got to the streets, and I went home with my ounce of marijuana safely in my pocket. So I don't see what the problem is with racist problems here. What are you talking about?
Right, exactly. And believe it or not, I'm gonna tell you, Casper, that is sort of an ignorance a lot of times that you hear permeating from people who haven't experienced it, who haven't seen it, who haven't walked in those shoes. There was a book a guy wrote. He was white and he became black for about a year or more. Remember that book? What was it?
I know what you're talking about.
but he actually became black. I mean, he had the pigmentation done and all that. And he talks about it, man. I think everybody in America should read that book.
It's called Black Like Me. It's called Black Like Me.
There you go. That's it. And his experiences, just innately, just the experience with it, going through it, because it's still hard. It's like me, for example. I'm with an organization called Federal Employed Women. I'm the national, just came off the board for the national vice president for the organization, the only male on the board. And still, for me to try to understand what women deal with, I'm not a woman. So
right.
to try to, I can, what's the word? I can try to understand, but I'm still not going to get it because I'm not a woman. And that's the same way we would try to get people to understand. When you're in a country that was built on racism, it was the foundation, the very genesis of the nation was built on racism.
Right.
Then it is as much as this country, as I use the word, it's apple pie. It's a fabric of nation. And some people don't want to believe that. And I tell them, I say, that's why you always have to diligently be vigilant in whatever laws, whatever this country does. The race card will always be played, no matter how you cut it. America is a race card. It's not the only playing the race card. I'm like, yes, it is. You can't get any more of a race card than America. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
Well, when we think about race in America, we generally think of the black-white race thing. But let's not forget that when those first Americans came here and settled this country, they did not consider the Indians that were living here human beings. That's why it was right to slaughter all of them. So it isn't just black and white. And I very seldom share this story, but I think it gets to the point for a lot of our melanin deficient people like me listening out there. Okay, I came into work one night as a captain on the department. There's a note in my box to go see the chief. I go up to see the chief. He hands me a letter, and he was invited to something at one of the local high schools that we had to show the badge at, but he wasn't going to go, so he said, you got to go to this thing tonight. I said, okay. So at 7 o'clock that night, I drive over to the school, and I go in, and I'm hanging around, I'm talking to people and doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I get into a conversation, and this is the term I prefer because there's nothing pejorative about it, but I get into a conversation with a high melanin content woman, okay? And we're talking about different stuff, and at some point I said something that caused her to look at me, and I'm there in uniform, and she said, well, that's a sexist comment. And I said to her what I always said back then, and that was, no, I'm not sexist. You just misunderstood me. And she looked at me square in the eye, and she said, let me tell you something. You're a white male in a white male privileged society. You cannot help but be sexist and racist, and I suggest you get yourself into recovery as soon as possible. Well, I kind of looked at her and said, you don't know me, and I walked away and thought, oh, stupid that she said that, and how dare she say that to me, she doesn't know me, and then how cool it was that she said that to a uniformed cop, right? And it wouldn't go away. For a couple days, I kept thinking about it. And then finally, something struck me. Here's my wonderful success story. I came into the town of Tonawanda Police Department as a rookie patrol officer at the age of 22 years old in 1969. I left there as a captain at the age of 42 years old in 1989, 20 years later. That's a hell of a successful career, and I have every right to be proud of that. But let's go back to 1967 when I took the patrol man's exam that women were not allowed to take. So now let's talk about my wonderful success story by starting out by saying, after having more than 50% of my competition eliminated for me, it doesn't sound quite as impressive anymore, it doesn't. And I realized that the subtlety of privilege, whether it's gender, race, money, when you have it, you don't realize you have it. And I don't know that woman's name, never saw her again, but I thank her for creating a major change in my life and making me understand that I have this problem. And what changed for me after that was if somebody said I said something sexist or racist, I didn't say, no, you don't know me. I said, why? And you know what? 90% of the time when they explained it to me, they were right. So I think we all need to go through that education.
And, you know, Cass, Chris, one of the things that right now, you know, we blacks in government, we passed a resolution last year around this time of the year. At the resolution adopted about the Redskins name change. Now, here it is. We sitting here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, and we wrote a letter to President Obama and we said, listen, we think that on all federal property, the name should be banned and the paraphernalia and all that on federal property because the Native Americans have already made it very clear that the name is racist and it has racial connotations for them. Now, how much more do I need somebody to tell me? If you tell me something I'm saying to you is offending you, I need to stop and hear you. Now, that's one thing I don't understand with this country is, and you got black folks too. Well, you know, somebody asked the question, well, why are we concerned? Why are we raising the issue now? I said, that's like somebody telling me why they raised the issue when Rosa Parks set up on the bus when she did. Right. I said, you know, at some point in time, whether it's wrong or right, whether you raise the issue at some point, maybe before you were too afraid or maybe they would have killed you for raising the issue. But the bottom line is we've raised the issue now and still with everything that has come out, all of the people that have now come out against it, you know, we get ready to start a new season with the name Redskin being all over the TV. And I had a Native American attorney works for one of the departments, government agency. She says, Matthew, every time I come to work and I see that name, she said, I well up inside. So, you know, you ask yourself, why is it that we can't begin to understand these things in America that are hurting other people, but yet we continue to do them?
Yeah.
It just seems like it's a part of our nature. And that's why sometimes when I hear about us going overseas and attacking other people and telling other people they're wrong, and people say, well, wouldn't you prefer to be in America than any place else? I'm like, hey, you can be in any place that is still doing something wrong, but everybody wants to feel comfortable whether you're wrong or right. You want to feel comfortable where you're living or what you're doing. So it doesn't mean just because I can have the money and I could be just as crooked as I could be, but I can have a lot of money and I could live in a nice house. So it's that type of thing. How do we get people to understand marijuana? Yes, drugs you can't prohibit it out of people, but at the same time, how do we stop America from coming up with something else that's even worse than drug prohibition? Well, I mean, right now we're focusing on it. You know,
the thing is, and we even have a little sometimes problem within LEAP about this discussion. But I tell people that when we first came up with the name for this organization, we are not law enforcement against drug prohibition or marijuana prohibition. We are against the policy of prohibition. And what we mean by that is prohibiting consensual adult behavior. When you have activities between consenting adults that they choose to do with each other, they're not doing it to other people who don't want it done. They're not doing it to children. It's just adults doing it together. If you make that illegal, all you do is create crime in your society, and if there's money connected to it, you create violence. And I want to comment on one thing real quick, because I wanted to mention this earlier. There was just an article in the Buffalo newspaper that Jamestown, New York, which is a small city south of Buffalo, just made a 47-person drug arrest. It's one of those 2-year investigation garbage things. They arrested 47 people. Now, using the number 30,000 a year as the amount of money it costs us to keep somebody in prison, I just did the math. If we convict every one of them and send that to jail, we will be spending $1.5 million a year for as long as they're in there to lock up all those people. And you know what? There's going to be just as much drugs on the street as there was before we arrested them. So
that's right.
Just economically.
And even more than that, Chris, the fallout from all of the people that those arrests are going to affect.
And
so again,
I'm not even counting the $100,000 to $150,000 ahead the investigation cost.
Right.
Well, let me jump in and ask, Matthew, what do you think about the DEA's new stance on nonviolent criminals being released from jail and not going after medical marijuana raids in states where it's legal? You think that's going to make things easier and better, or you think it's another step? You think it's just public relations?
Yeah, I think it is a good step in the right direction. Again, it's outdated, it's slow, but it is a step in the right direction. Again, when we look at the whole war, this so-called war on drugs, or we look at what it has done to communities and the devastation that it has done, again, it's almost like any real war. If you go in and you start shooting and killing innocent people who don't deserve to be shot and killed, then what you're going to do is have a lot of fallout from that. And now you're going to make you're going to make some real enemy combatants. You're going to make some real people angry. So, again, I think it's a step in the right direction. It's what we need in this country. We need to just end this whole thing. And to piggyback off of that, Casper, we got the Drug Policy Alliance is coming out with news, where they've got now legalization ends discrimination. They got this thing going to be on the ballot in Washington, D.C. come November. So that's hot off the press. The fact that now they got 56,000 signatures from residents of D.C., and they're looking forward to having this initiative to be on the ballot and whether marijuana should be legal or not. And again, when we look at DEA, we look at the president's policy. I think they're slowly but surely moving in that direction because they know they can't go in until Colorado and what's the other state?
Washington.
Yeah, Washington and Colorado and these many other states that grandfather, they know they can't go in and enforce these people federal law and say you are still violating federal law. So you got to come up with something to sort of anesthetize the situation and sort of say, look, we're going to kind of follow the state policies and procedures, and so slowly but surely, do it without looking like we're bowing down to the states. But that's really what's happening. They're beginning to understand that they're outdated on this issue.
Well, what we got to come up with now is a proper ending to the show. We got just about 2 minutes to give a shout out to our favorite websites and any organizations you want people to put a spotlight on.
Right. Well, for me, I'm still out there. You can look at with my website. I usually tell people just Google my name, Matthew Fogg, but I got a website out there, bigotswithbadges.com. And then Matthew for Delegate, Matthew Fogg for the number 4 delegate.com. And then I like for them to go to our Blacks in Government, which is bignet.org, BIG, Blacks in Government, net.org, and visit us and join the organization and look at some of the issues that we passed a resolution this year about the chokehold in New York. So get out there.
And Peter?
Well, leap.cc, copsaylegalizedrugs.com, and the thing that I end every show with that I want everybody out there to understand, and that is that bad things continue to happen because good people stay silent.
And remember, the next time
share your audience with us.
And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp.
When I awake
Free? Did you say free? Free hemp? Free hemp? Free hemp video and audio? Free downloads of all the top artists, all the pot artists on planet Earth. Interviews with all the people making the movement, making the hemp movement. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp. That's right, world. It's time for hemp.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana, enforced on the world by American weapons of war. Not the peace of the grave or the security of the slave. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Not merely peace for Americans, but peace for all men and women. Not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
Education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp.